Alright, hey guys, and welcome to another video. I'm going to talk in this video about, really specifically about the lowering springs that I decided to go with. Now, I've had these things for long enough, and I know I've made a couple videos pretty much up to this point where I speak pretty highly of them, and honestly, for the money, it's a pretty darn good mod. Probably a little down the line, I'm going to definitely be making a video talking about mods that I regret, and unfortunately, just given the amount of time that I've had these springs for, I would be lying if I said I was completely happy with them. It's not the fault of VWR springs, it's a matter of kind of any lowering springs. Obviously there are better lowering springs than others. One of the things I kind of wish I ended up going with would be kind of a, and I'm gonna say this now, a dedicated coilover setup that allows me to retain my DCC function. And I'm pretty sure Bilstein was one of the companies that I was sort of looking at the time. In my mindset with a lot of things nowadays, especially with cars, because in the GTI I made so many mistakes when I was purchasing things. I wasn't super in love with the Borla. You know, and that's stuff you learn obviously after the fact pretty much, and that's why, you know, I create a YouTube channel, is I want to be able to shine a light on you know, certain things to look out for. So my new mindset with you know, this build is buy nice or buy twice, and I don't know at this point if I'm going to be doing anything further to the suspension. I'm not a stance guy by any means, but I'm an overall, you know, this is my daily driver. So now let's kind of get into the nitty-gritty of my complaints. My complaints being, when you're doing lowering springs, you're taking a lot of things out of the car and putting it back in. When you put it back in, if you're like myself, it's probably not going to be put in correctly. And that's just, you know, that's a common thing with a lot of, you know, aftermarket suspension setups. A lot of people like to do it themselves because it's a pretty expensive job if you bring it. You know, if the front coilover setup is just absolute strugs. You have to take out, I had to take out the axle nut. That was awful. It was so annoying, so tedious. It took graciously everyone, you know, I had a big crew that helped me, but it took us way too long for this job, and I would have never been able to do this myself. So that was just annoying. It was just a big pain in the neck. You know, again, it's a cheap mod. It's a cheap, and I'm not going to say easy mod, but it's a cheap mod. It seems like it is easier than it really is. It's really not that easy. You know, buying it's one thing, putting in the car is another thing, and that's just something to keep in mind. I'm dealing with some issues, and it's I don't think it's like a loose top hat or the strut tower. I don't think that's loose. It's a matter of, I think, just my shocks. I think it's over tightened. I'm not too sure. I definitely didn't do anything to spec. Usually when you do these types of installations, not many people do, you know, tighten the bolts to spec. Reason being is usually, you know, when you tighten to spec, I always just, you know, you know, I'm not trying to strip any nuts by any means, but I'm also, you know, I'm trying to just make sure it's tight, you know. So, and you kind of get a good idea as to that, because I know a lot of folks that have, you know, done installations where they do tighten everything to spec, and it loosens up down the line. So in fact, actually my rears were tightened to spec. We actually did use a torque tool, and my end link bolts got loose. So, you know, that's just one of the things, like, you know, those types of things that's, you know, regardless of doing a lowering spring or the rears, I mean, that's bound to happen for something like that to get loose. But I think one of the things, and just given my general just comfort, I mean, it's just the comfort, it just doesn't exist with this car. I mean, it has gotten very, very stiff, and that's where it comes into play, where, you know, selecting the right lowering spring can certainly make a difference. It is a pretty day and night difference now that I, you know, have had these springs sort of settle in for this 6 months maybe I had them. So, you know, it is, I'm pretty used to it, and the suspension is pretty much what it is now. It's what it'll probably be until the shocks get old, and I'm going to need to swap those out. But as I'm trying to say, I mean, the suspension is how it is now, is pretty much how it's going to stay. It's not going to get any more comfortable. It's not going to get any more stiff. That being said, it is pretty darn stiff. I remember when I was initially reviewing these, I wasn't super put off by the feeling. I will say it is now a very drastic difference between race mode and comfort. Comfort is smoother than race mode, but still pretty rough. That's also factored by my 19-inch wheels. However, I'm on a soft all-season tire. So, I mean, I think generally, I mean, I'm coming from a summer tire on a 19-inch wheel on stock suspension, going into a, you know, now lowered car with all-season tires. So realistically, it should be a nice red GTR. Hopefully you guys can see it driving by. So, I mean, generally it should be relatively what it was stock, because now I'm on a smoother tire. So I don't know, it's just, you know, you do one thing, you do the other, and regardless, it is pretty darn stiff. I hate driving this thing in race mode. So if I put the car into race mode on the highway, even on the highway, it's a little bit stiff. We're talking like Focus RS stiff. Like, I don't know if you guys can just see just how my body is reacting to some of the bumps. It's a very smooth highway, I can assure you that. And this thing is just not really, not loving it. So that being said, if you want to retain your peace of mind when it comes to driving these cars, I wouldn't even bother lowering it. That's the first thing. I love this thing lowered. It's so sexy. I've never ever considered lowering a car. After doing it, you know, I'm glad I did it once. I don't know if I'm gonna do it twice, like, to be quite frank. And if I do, I hope I'm making a lot of money so I can pay someone to do it. So yeah, that's just the general ride. Obviously, you know, as I'm saying time and time again, it is stiffer. It is a lot stiffer. It's not harsh by any means. In fact, you know, like I said, I mean, I'm 19-inch wheels. I mean, it's these complaints about the springs are almost like a null point, because anyone who's riding, you know, 19-inch wheels on rubber bands, they're gonna suffer dearly. So that's just kind of the nature of it, and I don't know, just something to keep in mind. The final thing I just want to bring up too, and I've probably was you know, mentioning a little bit of the clunks and the sounds that this thing was making just from, you know, loose bolts. Yeah, I mean, I have a knock coming from the rear end again. My end links bolts, those are actually tight now. I notice it's a really noticeable deep clink. It's not like a metal, like, easy to find clink. I almost worry that it's my shock. Or, I mean, it makes sense that it could be something related to my end link itself. Those little rubber bushings, those go out really quickly. So I'm not too sure what exactly it could be. I do know it's something I don't really want to have happen, and you know, it's probably sway bar or end link related in the rear. Now the front, I have this unusual swishy, annoying, and again, these complaints, as far as like the knocking and everything, they're mostly my own fault from not installing these correct the first time, which is another thing you guys should know. If you're not really good at working on things yourself, this type of job is not for you. So just wanted to give you a quick rant about these lowering springs. I know it's, you know, a lot of people ask about it. They always ask what the suspension is, because it's really an OEM plus look. It's not, you know, slammed by any means, so it is still drivable. The clearance is perfectly fine. However, the ride is stiff. It's not, you know, it's not going to beat you up by any means, but it's stiff. Ways to combat this is, well, first, don't get lowering springs. Maybe settle for a coilover of some sort where you have some adjustability for ride. You know, I never ended up doing the coilover thing because I just wanted to just do lowering springs. I never really knew. I mean, I have friends who are on lowering springs, and you know, it's kind of just they get a lot of heat. Nowadays they are improved from how they used to be. You know, they've always kind of been sort of the an easy thing to do, or a quick thing to do, or a cheap thing to do to make your car look better. But I kind of wish I just went with, and this would have been balling out at this point, but saved a little bit more money, or a lot of bit more money. I wish I got some Bilstein mag ride, or something to retain my DCC function that allows me to kind of just do everything an aftermarket coilover will do. So, and I'm told that you can make those things pretty smooth. So I don't know. That's just something maybe to look for in the future. Maybe I'll go to an 18-inch wheel. I'm not too sure. I have been eyeballing APR wheels. In fact, one of my buddies, Peter, he actually has some APR wheels, and I think they're 8.5s, and they fill the wheel well so nicely, and it runs a 235 tire, so same type of tire width as what I have on my Pretorias. But I would certainly entertain running APR wheels with like a summer tire or something like that. So I might start saving for that. We'll see. We'll have to see. They are really nicely priced. I think they're only like $1,000 for the set of 4. It's not a bad deal, guys. But anyway, that's my my little rant, just so you guys are updated as far as we'll call this like my 6-month update on lowering springs. You know, it's definitely something to do if you guys want to, you know, ball on a budget, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's certainly nice to not have to spend a bunch of money on car parts, and especially, you know, suspension that, you know, is not like any car part, it's not going to last a super long time. It's something you have to maintain, but I don't know. I do really like the way this thing looks on these VWR springs, and I'm not hating on them by any means. I do, you know, I like Racing Line. I think it's an awesome company. I think they have some really cool products. I'm only running their lowering springs. I think that's the only product I have of theirs. But you know, it's all nice. It's all good stuff. So, like I said, I'll end it there. Definitely stay tuned for more videos to come, guys. We'll definitely have some. We'll start pumping out some fire content. And anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.